Hey everyone, let's talk traveling with your guitar. You probably figure there's two basic ways to travel with a guitar. One is to take a hard case, put your guitar into the hard case and check it, and hope and pray it comes out the other end the same condition as when you checked it in. The other is to take a soft bag, gig bag of some sort, and try to carry it onto the cabin and hope and pray there's enough space in the overhead bins and that they let you actually do the carry-on thing in the first place. There are also travel guitars, things like the Stewart Stowaway and the Journey guitars, but in that case you're really prioritizing travel over having a guitar that just really suits you. And you know, if a Journey or a Stewart fits you really well, that's fantastic. But considering how personal people are with their instruments and you just got to try them and find what works for you, chances are that's not the case. And it was not the case for me. I tried a Stewart Stowaway. I did a previous video of my first impressions and sort of the initial demo of it. But in the end, it just wasn't the right guitar for me. If I get a chance, I'll do another video with a full review of my thoughts on it and how it went. But the bottom line is that if I'm given a choice between the Stewart Stowaway and something like, this is a Yamaha RGX that I picked up a few weeks ago, I really love this Yamaha RGX. And so I want to play this one. I don't want to play the Stowaway. So, okay, but how do we travel with this? Well, I'm going to show you a trick that somebody at the 12th Fret, a local music store here in Toronto, something that he showed me, and I've tried it and it works. So this is battle proven. I have traveled with this technique. What it is, what he showed me, this is again the guys from the 12th Fret. I'm not getting anything out of this, but he didn't make a sale, and so I feel bad that he's changed my life. This was a game changer for me, and he didn't get anything out of it. So 12th Fret, thumbs up, really knowledgeable staff. So what he showed me is that you take any bolt-on neck guitar, and they're just 4 screws that hold this on. So really what you can do, and it doesn't matter if it's a Stratocaster, Telecaster, or anything with a bolt-on neck, it won't work with a Gibson. So far as I know, Gibsons are not bolt-on, but anything that has this bolt-on style, what you can do is simply take the screws off, and then you take the neck off, and now you can put this guitar into any suitcase. And I figure that it being in my suitcase, swaddled in, 10, 20, 30 centimeters of clothes, what is that in inches, like 6 to 12 inches of clothes, is going to be a lot better than in a hard case. And it's less likely to be stolen. And it means that I have 1 check instead of 2. So I prefer that technique, but that's really the bottom line. Without getting any further into it, let's actually dive into how do you take this bad boy apart, and then afterwards I'll go through some of my extra tips, techniques, what my strategy is for travel right now. So as I said, we'll go to a bit of a close-up here. What we're going to do is take off this the neck. Before we do that, what we want to do is loosen the strings, just 2-3 turns to do the trick. I've already loosened these a fair bit, but I'm just going to give them a half turn each of loosening to demonstrate. Then we're going to take a capo. So this one is a G7 ultralight capo that I happened to find at Long & McQuaid's, another local music store that I happen to like. Again, I'm not getting anything out of this. I just think they're cool. And it doesn't matter though. My last trip, I just used my Kaiser standard capo for electric, and it works as well. Just the G7 is a little more compact. Use whatever you have. Heck, you could use rubber bands and it would work. All you really want is you want to hold the strings at the nut. So you just want to make sure that the strings don't come off on you, because that becomes a real pain in the butt and you're more likely to damage the strings. So you just throw a capo on here, make it reasonably tight. There we go. That's actually a little bit too tight. I'm going to back that off so I don't damage these strings. There we go. Now the strings are going to be held in place and I don't have to worry about it. Next, I'm going to flip this guy over, and I'm just going to take whatever screwdriver happens to fit the bolts, and I'm going to undo these screws. And that's basically all it's going to take. That's the only thing that's holding this neck on are these 4 bolts. So I'm going to take off 1, 2, here's the third one. Quick note on tools, you usually cannot carry on tools onto an airplane. So make sure that your tools, screwdriver, string cutters, whatever, end up in your check. Otherwise, they will probably stop you at security and say you can't carry that on. So there we go, there's 4 screws off, and don't forget your back plate. So I take those 4 and I'm just going to put all of that into a Ziploc bag. I love Ziploc bags, it keeps my life organized, but use whatever you feel like. And I have a little Z-shaped screwdriver that I toss in with it as a backup, and that way I guarantee I have a screwdriver that I can use along with the screws. So put all of that into my Ziploc bag, set that aside. Now comes the tricky part. Is what you want to do is you want to flip this over very carefully, and you're just going to lever off the neck here very gently and pull it out of the pocket. So it's a Yamaha, so it's very tight. Again, their quality control and their tolerances are extremely tight. And I am very fortunate that inside of this pocket, let's see if I can set this aside in a way that I can show you the pocket. Inside of this pocket, there are no shims. There are no shims in here. There will oftentimes be shims on even a brand new guitar to just get the neck to sit in the right spot. You have to make sure those shims stay in the right place, or when you put the neck back, it will not play properly. So you really want to make sure those shims stay in the right spot. You can either mark it with a pencil where they were and try to put them back, or you can hold them in with just some tape. Again, I got lucky that this guitar doesn't have any, so I don't have to worry about it, but just something to be aware of. If you pull the neck off and there's shims in there, you got to make sure you get those back. But that's it. This is now ready to go. So I have a neck and I have the body, and this will fit into just about any suitcase. And again, I swaddle it in all of my clothes, wrap it up good and tight, and she's ready to travel. Now, quick note, it will not fit into a carry-on, unfortunately. If it were headless, it would, because that length right here is basically the maximum you can fit diagonally in a carry-on within the carry-on limits, and then the head just makes it over the top. So that's unfortunate, but again, it'll fit into any carry-on, or sorry, not any carry-on, any basically check suitcase should fit. You can, if you wanted to, you could just simply remove the strings, and the two will be completely separated, and then just put new strings on when you get there. That totally works. I prefer keeping the strings on, and then when I get there I can decide whether or not I'm going to swap strings or put new strings on, or keep the old strings. So one or the other. But that's basically all there is to it. Again, as I mentioned, tools, you usually cannot carry them on, especially if you have a full-size screwdriver. A quick note, I did replace the screws with standard number 8 1 3/4 inch wood screws. I did that because I noticed the screws were slightly stripped when I got it. So I replaced them with these guys right here. And that way I'm guaranteed that these are not stripped. I'm not going to end up somewhere overseas, stripped screws. Oh crap, what do? I can't get the neck off. Now I can't pack it. Now I'm screwed. So this guaranteed that. A quick gotcha for Canadians. Canadians, a Robertson screw is not something that exists anywhere outside of Canada. So these wonderful square head screwdrivers and screws, that I love them because I find them harder to strip. I find that they torque a lot better, but you will not find a Robertson screwdriver outside of Canada. So make sure, be absolutely sure you have a screwdriver and at least one spare, or you will find yourself screwed when you get to the other side. Or, just use Phillips head screws. That's basically it. Now we can proceed to put it together the same way we would on the other end. The first step is make sure that the strings are all straight. Nothing's gotten twisted, nothing's gotten tied up. And what you want to do is place the neck back in the pocket. Again, this is a Yamaha, so it's very tight. And then it should just sit nicely in the pocket. You'll feel the strings start to come under a little bit of tension. Shouldn't be too much tension because, again, you loosen them off. And then flip it over. If you're in a hotel, I would do this in like a hotel bed or something like that. And then you take your plastic baggie again, get out your back plate and your screws. Take all of these out here. Set the back plate into position. Make sure you have your back plate. And then just sort of line up, make sure the screws line up properly. And screw it gently into place. I start with just getting it into place. I don't tighten them particularly. I just get it so that it's in place. And that's basically it. Now, an important note screwing these in. I'm sure somebody will have opinions about what order you do these in. I don't think it matters that much. And to be honest, I'm putting this thing in and taking it apart so often that it shouldn't really matter. But the one thing that does matter is make absolutely sure that you do not over tighten these screws. If you crank down on these, you can damage the neck, you can damage the body, you can do all kinds of nasty things. Don't do that. These don't need to be that tight. All that you need is for them to be basically in place and roughly finger tight. Just want them to be snug. So there we go. So now I've got them in place, and now I'm just going to snug them up just a little bit. Make sure everything here fits in just nicely. And there we go. So now I have a guitar. It's all assembled. I can pop off my capo here. And with that, all I really need to do is tighten up the strings, tune it, and she should be ready to play. So there we go. I have my Yamaha, and this is exactly what I did last time I traveled. Is I just put it back together again, tightened it, tuned it, played. So you might also want to get used to doing some setup on your guitar. Things like adjusting intonation, adjusting action. Those will vary a little bit. Truss rod becomes important because if you're going from a very dry environment to a very wet environment or big temperature swings, you will probably need to adjust the truss rod at some point. But it's overall a good thing anyway because you just get used to your guitar and how to make it play the way you want to. That said, I went from a place that was moderately warm to a place that was extremely hot, and I did no adjustments and it played beautifully. So chances are you won't need to do a lot of adjustment anyway. So that's it in terms of how you assemble and disassemble it. My current strategy is that I take this guitar in a gig bag to the airport, and I get there with lots of extra time, which is also a general strategy I have with traveling, but in this case it's particularly important. And I will ask at the check-in counter, can I carry this onto the airplane? Can I bring this into the cabin? And if they say yes, then great. I leave it in the gig bag. Make sure to check your tools so that you don't get stopped at security with tools that you can't carry on. And life is good. If they say no, then I'm prepared. I take it apart in the airport, put it into my check suitcase, and get it when I get to the other side and put it back together again. I do that for a few reasons. One is that assembling and disassembling it's a bit of a pain. As you've seen, it's not that much of a problem, but I'd still prefer not to do it if I can avoid it. The second is that I can then play it when I'm waiting for the airplane, or if I have a layover somewhere, then I have the guitar with me. But I also don't push the point. So if I get to, for example, my previous trip, when I got to the airport, I asked, and they said, no, you cannot, if it does not fit in the carry-on size, you can't carry it on, period, no ifs, ands, or buts. I've since found out that's actually not per Canadian regulations, American regulations, or the airline company's regulations, but I wasn't going to push the point. On the way back, I got to the airport and they said, oh yeah, sure, you can totally carry this on. I said, great, I carried it on. So I find it's really good to have that extra tool in your toolbox so that you can get around problems. Maybe in some cases you want to carry it on, maybe sometimes you won't, but here you have the option without having to have another check, without having to worry about it. You have a way to deal with it. Again, this should work with any bolt-on neck, so that's basically all Fenders, any Strat or Tele clones, Yamahas seems to work with, so be careful with Gibsons. I'm pretty sure that those do not bolt on, but check. And otherwise, I hope you all have some great travels, happy strumming, and I'll see you on the flip side. Take care.